Hello and welcome back once again. Today we're going to talk about self-hosted documentation. Everybody's got notes laying around on their desk like this, and critically important information is always on the front, a lot of times on the back, and the point is you lose them. There's got to be a better way. So self-hosted documentation is important because you're going to want to document how you configure your home lab. You're going to want to document your network configuration. You want to document the steps you use to install applications. And you want to keep notes on your how-tos in order to solve particular problems that keep reoccurring. Examples are upgrade procedures for products like Discourse, WordPress, Rocket Chat, and Nextcloud. Popular note-taking applications are Evernote, Google Keep, and Microsoft OneNote. There are also self-hosted options to document your home lab. So what are some self-hosted note-taking applications? Well, they include programs like Standard Notes, Turtle, Trillium, OpenNote, and Nextcloud Notes. I really like Nextcloud a lot, and it does have great note-taking features, but I consider Nextcloud to be more of a cloud-based workspace with multiple functions, and a lot of times I like something a little bit more lean. My note-taking application of choice is Joplin. So, Joplin keeps your data private on your own local machine. Joplin can be synced and accessed by multiple clients. Joplin is available for Windows, Mac, Linux, iOS, and Android. And Joplin is up to date. At the latest Joplin client that I've got here is version 2.5.1, and it's only a couple of weeks old. Joplin is simple to use, it supports graphics, and it has a markdown editor. There's also a Joplin server. Joplin clients can sync to the server. Most commonly, Joplin data is synced to a file system, or it's synced to OneDrive, Nextcloud, a web dev server, Dropbox, or AWS. I used to sync my Joplin clients to WebDAV and later to Nextcloud. Joplin Sync Server was released in January of 2021 and is still marked as beta, but is very stable. And one of the reasons that I went off to use Joplin Server to sync my notes rather than use Nextcloud was performance. I got a lot better performance off of the specifically purposed Joplin Server to do my note syncing. The last release of Joplin Server was in the last 2 weeks of this presentation, so we're talking about some really updated products here, currently maintained. Joplin Sync Server is a web interface and a database application using PostgreSQL database in 2 Docker containers. And Joplin Server works via NginX Reverse Proxy Manager, so you can sync clients from anywhere. So as an example, I have maybe a desktop client, a client on my laptop, a client on my phone, and other computers. And that way, whenever I make changes to my notes, they sync to all the clients because they sync to the server. And Joplin Server and Joplin accounts are created and maintained by you locally. Okay, so now we're going to install the Joplin client. I'm going to do a sudo snap install joplin-james-carroll. And it installs the snap package. Now that the snap package is installed, we will exit the terminal and we will type in Joplin. And here's what Joplin looks like when you install it freshly. It'll come up and it will show you that you have a notebook or you can have multiple notebooks. You can have as many notebooks as you want. I by definition have just put everything in one notebook. I have no organization. And then you have notes underneath the notebook. So here we have note 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's the first note, there's the second note, there's the third note. And you can delete these default notes, of course. And then you have the ability to go off and synchronize. So I could go off here and it'll tell you that you can sync to Joplin Cloud. They have a sync service. Again, it's public, but that's why I like the self-hosted Joplin server that we're going to talk about. And of course, Dropbox and OneDrive. But you can go off and edit all of those things. In options, that's where you have the ability to set your sync server. So you can go off and set your sync target. We're going to be using the Joplin server beta. And then we'll have a server URL in here. In my case, if I go off and type it, I have an existing Joplin server, but we're going to go ahead and create one. So anyway, that's pretty much what there is to the client. Creating new notes is fairly intuitive. I like the way the product works. And of course, you can see that it's got embedded graphics. The left side of the screen is kind of your markdown editor, and the right side of the screen is what you see GUI wise. And if you don't want that, you can always come up here to the full screen mode, and you can just see all of this down here. But it's quite useful. I frequently put screenshots in here and other graphics and indentations. It's got an editor with all the common things you would expect to see up here. Anyway, that's basically all there is to the client. So Joplin Sync Server has a GitHub project, and the GitHub project has some documentation on how to install the server. I ran around in circles for quite a bit trying to figure out how exactly this works, and that's the beauty of this video. I've done all that in advance. So we have a server here. It's a dedicated server instance in my particular case, and the first thing that we want to do is we want to go off and install Docker. So I'm installing Docker. Okay, now that Docker's installed, I'm going to add my user to the Docker group. And then I'm going to bring the Docker group in as an active group. I can type groups, and you can see that Docker is now added to my Scott account. The next thing I'm going to do is install Docker Compose. So I'm going to do a sudo apt install docker-compose. Okay, we're going to do a make dir on a data folder. We're going to cd into the data folder. We're going to make dir on a Postgres folder inside of it, and we're going to cd back to the main folder. Okay, so the next step is we're going to have to create a Docker Compose file. So we're going to do a nano docker-compose.yml, and we're going to go ahead and paste in the syntax for this, which I will put in the show notes. So what you want to look at here is this thing has two volumes. It has a database Docker volume and it has an application for the Joplin server volume. And you want to go ahead and make sure that you set the password the same. Something probably more cryptic than my password, but you want to have the password and the user and the database match in the upper section and in the lower environment section. And then in the lower environment section, we want to specify the name of our server. So this says joplin.example.com. In our particular case, I'm going to make it sync.Scotti-BYTE.com. So you have to go off and define either an A record or a CNAME record that is going to point to your server in your domain name service provider. So I have predefined sync.Scotti-BYTE.com. So at this point, you can do a save on the file. Once you do a save, you can say docker-compose space up as a test. We're not going to detach it yet, but we're going to run it as a test to see how it pulls everything and see that it works. So at this point in time, the server should be up and running, and we're going to go ahead and do a Control-C to stop it. And then we're going to go ahead and do a docker-compose space up-d to detach this program so that we can go ahead and log out. In NginX Proxy Manager, we want to define a proxy host to point to our domain name, and we're going to make it HTTP and then the address inside your network for the server that we just built, and the forward port should be 22300. We want to go over to SSL, and we want to go ahead and request a new certificate, and you can come back in here later and say force SSL. And once you've done that, then you should be able to go off and click on your sync server, and it will go to wherever your address is. In my case, it's sync.Scotti-BYTE.com, and it redirects me to a login directory. And your initial password for this thing is going to be admin at localhost, and your password is going to be admin. So we're going to log in, and it will warn us that the default password should be changed. So we're going to click on change it now. I usually like to just put my name in here and go ahead and put my address and my email address in here. And then everything else is pretty good. Well, the password. So I'll go ahead and set my password up. And update profile. It wants a better password. All right, so let's just try okay, it seems to have liked that. So I can go here and log off, and I would log back in with my email address. And I can type in my password. and it logs me in. So I'm an administrator at this point, so I can go off and add other sync users to this, and I can make other settings. It'll show you items that are currently synced. Right now we don't have any items, so we could go ahead and sync items. I'm not going to do that. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and show you that I have a sync server set up and that I have notes syncing to it. Okay, so here's my Joplin Notes client, and if I click on Synchronize right now, you can see it's completed because everything's already synced to it. I have 62 notes currently on my notebook, and it's just my notebook name is Scott's Techie Notes, and I just have all kinds of information in here. For example, on the Joplin server, I have the instructions that I used to install the Joplin server and everything that I did to do it. I have my NginX Proxy Manager documented in here, what ports I used. There's some screenshots showing me all the different addresses. My Bitwarden, I have information on how I set up Bitwarden. My Rocket Chat server, same thing. So a lot of documentation here. If we go off to Tools and we go to Options and we go to Synchronization, you can see that I'm pointing to my Joplin Sync Server, which is actually joplin.scotti-BYTE.com, not the test one we did during the installation. And then I use my email, and then I have this like, it doesn't look like it, but it's like a 64-character password in here. And it says the sync interval is 5 minutes. Now, there is one other thing I'm going to show you, and that is go under Advanced Settings here. For whatever reason, you're going to have to put a check mark in this Ignore TLS Certificate Errors. And the reason for that is because right now with the development of the beta server, it's flagging some kind of a TLS error. But if you put a check mark in there, it will sync just fine. And this is going to be a very important step that you need to do to make sure that your sync server works. So in summary, Joplin Notes clients are available for Windows, Mac, Linux, iOS, and Android. Joplin server can be self-hosted and is much faster and more reliable than other sync mechanisms. And most importantly, Joplin Notes provides a readily available open source tool to document your home lab and keep all of your data local. Anyway, thanks so much for listening today, and I hope you'll subscribe and like, and we'll see you on down the road the next time.